Welcome to Isn't It Obvious, where things are obvious. That's going to be the intro.
So back to my 8-bit and 16-bit facsimiles of economic thought. Hubert is definitely a Marxist.
Oh my god. Every time.
So, isn't it obvious, guys, that defining someone by their generation is the same as defining someone by their horoscope?
No,
Maybe.
absolutely not. The time in which you're born has a tangible impact on your life, as opposed to
The time
where
in
the
which you're born?
stars were.
The time in which you were born? In the year? Sorry.
No, because that's arbitrary and fluctuates. It doesn't take into account we all dealt with the '08 recession as we were coming
Fair.
into adulthood.
Fair. There's definitely events that happen within a generation's
Yeah,
lifetime.
and that's not because Mercury was in retrograde when I was born.
Yep.
I mean, that's exactly something the year of a dragon would say, Micah.
That was the year of the tiger. Fuck you.
What are you the year of?
I'm the year of the cow.
See, I'm a dragon, so fuck both of you guys.
Oh,
I
I
have
was
the
so
cool
close.
one.
No, the
was
tiger's
so
better.
close.
No, dragon's
Yeah,
better.
absolutely.
Lizard people for the win.
Tiger uber alles.
Okay.
Something Dormus, something Dragus. I don't tickle a sleeping
Yeah,
dragon.
there's no Dracus uber alles, alright?
Something about Hogwarts school motto. Anyway,
Look, I'm just going to say it because it doesn't make sense to just pigeonhole an entire generation of people by just the time frame of which they're born. Just like it doesn't make sense that, like, oh, he must be patient and bright. He's the year of the cow. Like, it doesn't
But nobody's
work.
saying millennials are patient and bright because we dealt with one of the biggest economic collapses in the means of making money as we were coming into adulthood.
well,
That is not the same thing.
and a generation is relying on more than a month or a year of time. It's like what, 20 years or something on
But that's
average?
also accelerating.
True.
Like, it used to be a 20-year stance
Yeah,
because you would
it's
have
now
kids
more
at
of a-
20, and then that would change
Yeah, now it's
because
more like a
you at
10-year
24
thing.
would have a kid at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's changing your outlook and how that applies.
True.
Look, but the idea that, like, okay, so I'm going to define somebody based off the stars and when they're born, I think it's silly because you're basically already having a template of who that person is just based off what year, what decade they experienced things.
No, but
that makes
it's a different in astrology because you are making up things. Like, there's no horoscope for millennials because we all went through the same thing at relatively the same age.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that, like, your characteristics of who you are, whether you're
How
bright
do
or
those
courageous.
define? It's defined based on the experiences you went through at certain ages that is quantified and can be compared to other generations before
Well,
you.
are you talking
What
about?
Gen X's went through in their formative teenage years that affect a lot of their outlooks in 1983 to 87, whenever Gen X's would be... No, Gen X would be, what, 90s? When they
Are
were
you maybe-
teenagers?
Are you maybe talking
Mhm.
more about like personality traits being
Right.
assigned by generation versus?
Yeah, like horoscopes would say that, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
well, the year of the monkey, the person's going to be bright and clever, but maybe a little cheeky, right? Like, this is kind of
Tauruses
silly
are
because
stubborn or whatever, or
Right, but
Scorpios
who
are
said... Like,
cranky.
what broad
know.
swathes are you getting from a generational description?
Millennials
of a
are
group of
ruining
people.
everything.
Right. Oh, okay, boomer. Like, what are you talking about here? Like, in my head, it's...
Okay, boomer that's a derogatory term based on the fact that there was an incredibly high child production rate after post-war.
Yeah.
No.
That
in
qualification doesn't
response-
change the fact that there was a high birth rate after 1945.
No,
that
oh,
happened.
Okay,
And those type of
boomers.
people can be lumped together because they had a similar experience.
The
Yes, but
reason
it's-
why I... Okay, sorry, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, is their personality though all the same?
Absolutely
they're-
not.
they're
As
all
old
still
people
different.
dealing with the biggest American economic boom and feeling that younger generations aren't living up to the same thing because they definitely lack the same opportunities. Yeah, that
No.
holds a little bit more tangible effort than the fact that you're a Taurus or you're a Gemini and you definitely have two sides.
No. The reason why I bring this up is because it's a really lazy thinking to be like, oh, well, that person was born in 1950 time, so he's going to be closed-minded and doesn't understand how inflation works even though he's lived through it. This is a really terrible way of typecasting human beings into, oh, they all think this way because they're born this year,
Yep.
this
So
decade.
But that's a human trait. we lump people together. That's how we categorize things.
It's a
but it's
human
wrong
trait
though.
to use a horoscope that you're the year of the dog.
No,
It
that's not a
doesn't
human
make
trait. That is a stupid trait.
They're
You're
both
Because-
stupid.
You're
Absolutely,
stupid
no,
trait.
absolutely
Stupid.
not. One has historical impact. One is making shit up to make people feel better because they feel that things are happening to them that they lack agency in life, so they need some type of definition to go beyond that.
It's the same story you just said for both cases.
No,
People
it's
both
not. If I look at the horoscope and it says, Libra, you will face judgment today. That's every fucking day. Every day people deal with fucking judgment. That's not a Libra thing.
Okay,
I just
so
happen to scale it
Millennial,
better because
you
I'm
will
a
face
Libra.
judgment today for being
Yeah.
a millennial because everyone blames everything on you because you're a millennial.
Right. Hey, another industry that millennials killed. What is that?
What?
The horoscopes.
It's funny
this is-
because they blame us for blame us. Yeah, they blame millennials. We're millennials on so many things that are canceled or ruined. And it's
Yeah,
just,
even
it's-
though that's actually Gen X and Gen Y that are doing it.
And
That's
it
not
doesn't-
millennials that are going through the cancel culture.
but it's not even ruining anything. It's just natural.
Yeah, it's bringing attention to things that are fucked up.
Yeah, we're
It's
just like
societal self-checking.
basically we're just like, no, this is stupid and we're done with it. We're not ruining anything. You ruined it. We don't want it.
Yeah.
That's
Like
really
the-
what we're doing.
Okay, this kind of goes to my point where I'm sure the baby boomers had canceled things too. I don't see them doing
No, it was
swing
the
hall
fucking
dances.
Summer of Love and Mardi Gras and what else was it?
I mean, those are very different things.
They are. I don't know. Just the crazy shit people did 50 years ago. I don't know.
I mean, I guess the greatest generation canceled fascism in one country and kind of laid
Job.
the groundwork for fascism to start in a different country. So, yay.
moving around the problem, hoping someone else will solve it again. That's just what we do.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the greatest generation does. They just kind of shift around the problem and solve it with guns.
Yep, and hope someone
You know, we
else
can
will
lump
take care
all
of it.
those people born in 1920 together because they...
Are all the worst.
This is bothersome because obviously people are individual and they don't just follow a script.
Right,
Even though
it is
you
lazy,
had-
but you agree that we, three people of a similar age, under the classification of a millennial generation, experience similar things.
Yeah, just because we experience similar things doesn't mean that it defines you personally.
But
right?
it never does
Oh,
define you personally. It's to give you a category. Like, it's something of me as a white man, because I'm white, you can make certain assumptions about me that may or may not be accurate. But
it's also lazy thinking.
it is lazy. I'm not denying the fact that it's lazy thinking, but it's not fucking horoscopes.
It's just a stereotype.
It's
Right.
about as to me, it's about as useful as a horoscope, right?
But it's
if
not.
You're gonna, well, okay, let me think.
No,
about this
I'm
another
cutting you
way.
off now.
Well, Sarah, now you have to interject because
Oh,
I'm cut
okay,
off.
all right. I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it, Tom.
We have a weird rapport.
No, you're right. Okay, so I'm kind of on Micah's side on this one, only because you can make better reasoned assumptions based on the generation they were born into, because you know the things they lived through. So you can make actually pretty accurate assessments of people who are part of a generation. You might not be able to say like who they are as an individual and what religious beliefs are or their favorite color is. Like you wouldn't be able to get that kind of information based off of being a millennial or whatever. But you could say like, okay, they grew up in the 90s. They've almost definitely have watched whatever cartoon if they were a kid at that time and had access to TV. Like they grew up, they probably got their first cell phone when they were in middle school, high school, whatever. You know, like you can kind of make rough but educated guesses. A horoscope, that's all fucking bullshit. That's all out of their ass.
That's my point, is
That's
that
all
one
out
gives
of
you
their
a
ass.
false sense of security that you can make decent assumptions, and the other one you just know that it's just bullshit. In the case of the Zodiac signs, like, oh, well, or I kind of lump them all together, but like, oh, well, this is all just someone just writing shit down because some sucker is going to actually read this and think it's them. But it describes, at least in my head, what a Libra and Aries and whatever is out there. Like, it describes temperament. It describes some sort of personality. It describes how they're going to react to something. It describes their strengths and weaknesses. It describes perhaps resiliency. All that's bullshit on any level.
Wait, are you saying
And
that
even on a
horoscopes define that, or that
Yes.
people of a generation are prescribed that?
Both. They're both wrong. Like, you can't just define somebody based off like what time of year they're born if they're going to have a certain temperament. Just as much as you can't
But how is
assign
that
somebody who's born in a
That's
generation
true, though.
a certain
You wouldn't-
temperament.
Where
wouldn't be
is
able
that
to guess
expressed in
temperament.
a generational attribute?
Oh, millennials are lazy. Oh, boomers don't understand anything because they're so old. Oh, they don't understand inflation. Like, oh, this milk costs 10 cents. Oh, they don't understand economic impact. They don't understand our struggles.
It was never this expensive back
They're
in
not
my day.
Right. Like,
Right,
these are
but
not
how
true.
is that temperament and not
They're
assumed?
stubborn and they don't like new change.
That's true.
No,
on the,
that's
yeah,
true
on the
for
most part, a
everyone.
lot of old people don't like change. Have you tried
That's
explaining
not-
email to someone in their 60s? It's tough.
That's not just them.
That's not just
that's
totally
the point.
true
It's
either.
like these horoscopes are describing something so blanket that it fits everybody. That type of description could fit anyone.
Yeah.
And you could
Just-
think of easily people in your head. Oh, Fred is like that. Oh, Aaron's like that too. So therefore, it fits my worldview. That generations of people are filling the same type of mold that you don't even, it's a pre-shaped mold and all you have to do is add the details to it. This is clearly bullshit. And I equate them at the same level because they're both giving you some strange false sense of security or maybe giving you some sense of that your assumptions are more correct, so therefore you don't have to verify and check them. And so when you see someone that's old, you're going to think that, oh, they're cantankerous, they don't like change. That whole generation had it easy, so they don't have any resilience, and their temperament is always going to be bad. And like, wait, you could say that for any generation of people. In
And
fact,
that's
you could
the
say that
truth.
to anybody
In
you
fact,
haven't
no,
met yet.
that's the ultimate truth there is they just keep moving goalposts. Millennials were a certain age. It was our fault, right? It was our fault for we're lazy, we're terrible, we're not doing enough.
Like
Now-
in 2009, because we couldn't get work, because we didn't have
Ignore that,
experience,
just-
and companies...
Micah, I'm not trying to like defend it, like this is no, but like now it's Gen Y or Gen X, just like you said, Micah. Now it's they own cancel culture. It's now it's that's their thing. In a few years, it'll be the next Gen Alpha or whatever they decide to call it,
but
and they'll have
that's
some other
that's
thing.
a point I was going to get to about that. The whole idea of the generation being 20 years is not applicable anymore because you do not have sizable enough world events nor technology advances that fit that 20-year structure anymore.
Okay,
The
ignoring
technology age has blown that out of proportion. That's why in the last
but ignoring
20
the
years,
time
we've had
frame
three
of
generations.
just ignore the time frame of generations for a second. Then you've got these old people, what we call boomers, and we think, oh, they don't know what they're talking about, blah blah blah. Well, okay, 20 years or whatever, shift generations. When they were kids, they probably thought their old, boomer, the distance between them and us,
Their grandpa.
their grandpas were just as
But
out of touch
not as
and
much.
Maybe.
The technological difference of being a teenager in 1955 and what your grandparents in 1915 dealt with is not that great of a difference. You have a radio. You have a terms of mass communication that does, you look back, in 1915, you did not have that mass media. You did not have the efficiency and prevalence of motor cars. But you also probably farmed kind of the same way. And the way of life did not change all that much in that 40-year time gap.
Old people still
where
thought they knew better,
compare
and young
now
people still
to
thought
1980. Take that same time frame. What's the difference between 1955 and 1915? And then what is the difference between 2020 and 1980?
I'm not going to be able to give you any answer there. Not much.
Rough estimate of just thinking.
I don't care.
The amount of technological expanse there does make a generational gap more important because we grew up on the internet. We know how, and we have a bit of savvy when it comes to dealing with the internet.
Sure.
Our parents don't have that. That's not something they dealt with. Some can learn, and some do learn, and some can manipulate it to a reasonable amount. But that, as a generational thing, is not applicable to our parents because they didn't grow up with it. It was not an important part of their life.
But they probably grew up with other inventions that, the previous generation before them didn't have.
But it's not as drastic as the steps and bounds we've gone through in our lifetime.
Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I feel like that's just a matter of our perspective and our perception of it. I feel like there was probably some inventions and technological advances that were huge and just as impactful as the internet was.
Like?
The car.
So you're dealing with 1860s as opposed to 1910s?
I don't even care about the year. I'm just talking like inventions that changed history. The printing press.
Refrigeration and air conditioning.
Right, but these
available.
are things that are part of defining generations.
Sure.
Because there are generations that didn't have it, generations that went through development, and then generations that dealt with it, and then after that, it was just part of the zeitgeist.
But the personality...
It was part of life.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the personality attributes assigned to them aren't really all that different. They're very broad. You can kind of define them by the
Horoscope doesn't take the fact that you didn't grow up with internet into account. Horoscope is just a
Or
star
the
was
printing
there,
press.
so this means this. It's
Or the-
garbage to give people
Okay. Or
the
comfort in a
car.
society that is not religion.
I'm going to cut you off, Micah. Sarah, go.
What I'm saying is, yes, we can define our generations by the whatever technological advances that were in that time. But what I'm saying is that assigning personality attributes to a generation is kind of bogus because it's all cyclical. Everyone goes through the same stages of they think this about X generation before them and they think this about X generation after them. And it's kind of the same. It's not exactly the same, but it's kind of old people don't know what they're talking about and young people don't know how good they have it. The same fucking shit. You go back in time and you read reports of like philosophers and blah blah blah, you know, they'll say the same shit we're saying today. Old people don't know what they're talking about. Young kids don't know how good they have it. Yeah.
Yeah, that Plato fellow was certainly just disregarded by his underlings.
Okay, there's your one.
Diogenes?
But anyway, what
It's not one. It's a matter of like looking at the life changes over time, and that has to deal with world events and technology. What is the generation before the silent generation? Those that happened in World War One. There really wasn't a categorized generation of that.
Because
The
we
idea
don't-
of a generation being a 20-year gap is a modern invention of the 20th century.
I'm just going to say that I'm not here to define generations and how useful it is to kind of group people
label
together
people
and,
into specific generation
and
names.
like I agree that the scales of technology improvement is vastly different from 1850 to 1900 than it was from 1950 to today. 100% agree on these cases. My argument here is that the personality types of the people within that generation shouldn't be used as such a huge brush, broad strokes. Basically, if you put me in the Gen X category, you're comparing me to somebody who's 37 to 47 or whatever it is. And you're going to say, oh, well, he has a temperament of a Gen X. He is both lazy, but understands and is inquisitive, both a risk taker, but also conservative, both lucky but also unlucky. Like, it doesn't make sense like to be able to say this.
I've never heard that description about Gen X's ever.
Because no one has a description of Gen X other than they're just people
Yeah,
that
they're
don't talk
often
about.
like a forgotten generation.
Right.
Which is
Yeah,
really
no one
funny.
gives a shit about
describe
Gen X.
anything I want to them, and they can't say anything back because they don't exist. So that's the argument here.
Yeah,
is
no,
that, like,
nobody
just
from
like-
37 to
just like
43
Leos
exists.
don't exist.
I don't
just
know
like
any of them.
Libras
I
don't
don't
exist.
Prove
Just
to me that they exist. They don't exist.
Year of the
So
Boar,
it's-
gone. Just
the-
doesn't matter.
So
You're either boomer or Gen Z or whatever it is. Everyone in the middle is just kind of a forgotten folk. But my argument here is that, like, horoscopes and zodiac signs and all that stuff you see in the newspaper, and when you go to a restaurant, they have a little placemat that says, oh, I'm the year of the cow. Oh, I'm the year of the rat. None of
I'm
this
the
really
coolest.
makes any sense because it doesn't describe the personality type in enough detail other than to get you in fucking trouble. Because you're
I
giving blanket
disagree.
assumptions to people.
it
Right,
gives
okay,
you a
so you're saying
it gives you a baseline in which
okay.
Generalization,
it-
guys.
okay.
it is a stereotype. Zodiacs aren't stereotypes. There's nothing that I've known plenty of people that were born in 1986. They aren't all like me.
I can understand how useful it is to say, oh, this person saw the moon landing, or this person had saw like the Apollo projects go through, or lived through the height of the Cold War. Ask them about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah, fine. But you can't assign that like, oh, this person is very fearful because he lived through the Cold War. Oh, this person's such a risk conservative person.
But you can't
because he
then
saw the moon
disregard the
landing.
fact that there was that much tension, that the threat
No,
of
no,
nuclear
I'm-
war was part of that society at that
We're not
time.
saying that at all, Micah.
That's not what I'm saying. What I agree with you that there are events that you can say, yeah, I agree that this person probably lived through them, but I can't say anything more than that about what their personality type is.
So
are they type A? Are they
millennials
super
being
aggressive?
lazy is
Are
like
they-
is like saying Libras are lazy.
Right. Just because they had a life of leisure doesn't mean that, like, as a generation they had a life of leisure, perhaps. Doesn't mean that some of them weren't, like, driven in industrialites.
Yeah.
Or that they went to college and they had to work, like, the second shift to do that. Like, you have no idea. But you have a sense of an idea because they were born in the year of the cat that doesn't exist. and that because of the year
All
of the
right,
cat
you
doesn't
keep
exist,
making a point on
they
a
must be
generational
like
thing and then
this.
bringing the astrology into it.
That's my point. The
But
generation
it's
thing
not.
about assigning personality types is so similar to the horoscopes because none of it ever works, and yet they all make sense at the same time. It's a strange contradiction of I can assign any type of attributes to someone's personality, just like I can for astrology and the silly zodiac of what animal you are or what type of gem you would be, versus he was born in 1970 or between 1980, so therefore he is both the lazy person, but also the person who's stealing your job. I could say anything and it would stick, and that's a problem. And yet we still do it today. You read articles that boomers just don't get it because they're not inquisitive as a people.
And that's not necessarily true.
Silly.
It might be true for stereotypically like a number of them, but it's not always
true. And
you can't
grab it as a reasonable statistical value. You can't bell curve it to be like,
there's more of a
baseline
baseline to grab onto of a collective experience of people born in a certain generation that at a certain age went through this shared experience, as opposed to you were born this year, this is thrown at you. But someone who went through the Cuban Missile Crisis, someone who went through the space landing, that is something that born 30 years after that, looking back on it, you're like, they had a sense of awe. And that is not something that isn't arbitrarily prescribed to them like a zodiac sign. Like saying those born in 1984, the sign of the monkey, are inquisitive and questioning but might be foolish. That is bullshit. But saying that they had a sense of awe because they experienced a thing that was awe-inspiring.
But you're assuming that they did experience awe. You're
or
putting
that they cared to have awe.
Yeah.
Right? Like what I feel like
But it's an assumed thing that doesn't necessarily need to be tested. That when you interact with someone of that, it doesn't totally define them as a person.
Right. But the problem is you're going in here with a template of assumptions because they experienced the Cuban Missile Crisis, because they saw JFK die, because they went through the computer revolution. They saw, no, this is BS, because this is very much like shooting at a barn and then looking for the cluster of bullets and then drawing a giant circle on it and says, see how accurate and precise I was here. No, it's just random, and yet you are highlighting the hotspots after the fact. So example, if they saw the Apollo missions throughout and then they saw the moon landing, they're like, this generation probably has a lot of inspiration, curiosity, awe. They like science and technology. They like things about exploration and they want to see action. It's like, no. The people that were naturally like that as kids were globbing onto that because that's what they're interested in. This generation is very fearful. They're resistant to change because the Cuban Missile Crisis put the fear of God to them. No, the people that are naturally fearful responded to that event that way. The people who wouldn't could care less.
They lived their lives.
Right.
They ignored the happening. There was whatever.
Again, people
I'll go back to do my 9 to 5 and keep chugging along.
So that's my point, is it gives you a false sense of security about how to approach people in a certain age bracket that shouldn't exist. And
so
even if
what authority does astrological signs have to attribute to personality?
No more than a generation does.
Bingo.
No, absolutely not. Because something happened then that was relevant.
Something
whether
happened
or not it globbed onto them.
in June. Something happened in June of this year. And
no, absolutely not.
And whoever was born in that year experienced that thing.
Jesus fucking Christ, no.
I'm saying that both
This is fucking absurd, and it is mind-boggling that both of you are on this argument.
Maybe that should tell you something, Micah.
That's such a tiger thing to say.
Seriously.
No, really hot-headed. No, I'm just kidding. I will yield on very good points that you have, that certain events are going to shape people's psyche forever.
Yep.
Right? Flashbulb moments or things of high trauma, like surviving Vietnam. I agree that this was going to unfortunately and perhaps artificially change their persona type. But at a base level, and again, I'm pulling this out of my ass, but when I see children that are 4 or 6 or 8, I often wonder, why does this one really like dinosaurs? And why does this one really care about airplanes? And why is this one eating glue? It seems so random. And you think that kids have an empty, clean slate, and you just program the machine code into them. And then you're like, okay, you're going to be interested in hockey and golf and sports because you're a clean slate, and I'm just going to program the assembly language into you, and that's what you're going to be. But that's total fucking bullshit. They have their own persona types day 0, day 1, and then forever thereafter. And yeah, you can provide them events that, just like in Fire Emblem, could probably increase those stats a bit more. But the basic shape of that person is almost what they are. They're either going to be very aggressive and just really want to see the world, or they're going to be very passive and they just want to be able to observe it first. And that type of personality is just at a kid level without the need of generation.
It's not going to be determined by the month you were born, nor the generation you were born into.
Right.
No,
and so
because saying, again, it's a weird false dichotomy that you both are arguing as fact. So the month you're fucking born in has zero impact on who you are as a person. Things that are experienced as global events and...
I don't know. I could argue.
Did
that
9/11 affect you?
Yes.
Did that concept of 9/11, America being attacked by a foreign adversary that was not a state, have an impact on your psyche?
Yes.
But it didn't
Is that
really
not-
affect my personality and how I approached that problem.
Potentially. But when you see 9/11, you see something at the store is $9.11, your brain goes back to the myriad videos of planes hitting towers and giant explosions and collapsing things. That is something that defines us because we were of a teenage and a young age that sticks with us and will stick with us for the rest of our lives.
Okay.
Same thing with the JFK assassination.
Yeah, but
Okay,
for
smaller
a lot
scale,
of boomers.
smaller scale. You're born in the month of June, and you associate June with happy times because you have awesome birthday parties in June because everyone is like, yeah, summer parties, let's go to the beach. And so now you're associating
But
June,
now you're saying that everyone born in June has happy feelings.
yeah, because of the year of the
whatever,
shoot.
right?
What was
No,
it?
not even
But-
the year of. It's just those born in June. Everybody born in June is happy.
Yeah,
That's what you're
that's what
saying
you say.
there. That broad,
that's-
that
No,
broad
I'm just
stroke that
saying-
you're giving to astrology, you're saying that, oh, I have happy feelings about June. That means everyone in June has happy feelings. I'm saying that everyone who's a teenager and everyone who's an American through 9/11 has thoughts about 9/11. That is a tangible historical point that you can look at that can
Yep.
define a lot of choices that a person has
Yeah.
after that.
I agree that it, but again, I'm going to say
Same
that
with
it
birthdays and weddings happening in June. It's a happy fucking month.
I would say that perhaps
June is shit,
I
by the
am
way.
flirting with false dichotomy, but I will say this much: like, if you ask someone what their reaction was to 9/11, we all know that event because it's a flashbulb memory for us. But our reaction to it is unique. So if you say
I'm
something
not saying
like,
it isn't. But you can put that broad stroke, and then you can have variations in the hue there, where
No.
astrology and any
Just-
type of bullshit
can't
you're
have it.
going with is just something that something can
Ah,
be
this is
prescribed
where
to
you're-
at a point.
this is where you're a little. This is where we both fall into the same fucking pit trap full of spikes.
But it's
We're
not
both
based
gonna-
on any
Let him
tangible
finish
event.
his
I have the talking pen. I can
Yeah.
finish now.
tuck.
So the pitfall here is that for both flashbulb memories, how we react is unique. It's not the same. So a generation of people seeing that are not going to react the same way. But the self-fulfilling prophecy of zodiac signs, I could tell you that my parents, being as scientific minded as they are, said, oh, well, he's just like that because he's the year of this and they're this way. Oh, yeah, don't talk to that person because 7 years apart is bad. Like, they say this jokingly. I don't know. Hi, Mom. But I will say that this still creeps in because culture is silly, right? The same thing like, oh, he's an Aries, so therefore he's hot-headed and is, God of War sort of thing. It's like, well, anyone who has a birthday on that time frame, again, is going to be, they're going to associate it springtime with that. There's going to be weddings with that. They're going to have more activity during this time. If you have a baby during the early spring, you can take them out more up until fall if you live in a place that has like 4.5 seasons a year like we do. So like, yeah, that
We have
actually
3
changes.
seasons. You know that, Phil.
2
Oh.
seasons, construction and winter.
No. We have winter, construction, and 1 good month. That's it.
Okay, you guys are all wrong. We have winter, we have false winter, and then we have 3 seasons that are kind of sharing the rest of the fraction I just said. I don't know what they are. It's a mystery sometimes we don't understand.
Wait, which one is the half season?
We have really fucking cold, really fucking hot, and then some
Construction.
Construction.
No, then there's mud in one side, and then there's
There's mud on both sides.
delicious smelling leaves on the other.
And then there's this one day.
There's very
of the
fine
magical
mud on
year
both sides.
That's just perfect.
We live
Okay,
in Minnesota. We have 2 perfect weeks a year, and the rest is kind of shit.
Yeah. But those 2 weeks are so... during construction.
They're fucking perfect.
They
They're
make
fucking
it worth
perfect.
it. They make it
All
worth
right.
it.
So that's my point. Is like they're both.
There's
faultless.
factors that do influence you as a person, just
Yeah.
based on the time
They-
you are alive and the events that are happening in the days, months, years, generations that you experience them in.
So I think that they're both lazy, and I think that the problem is that they're also just very divide us type of attitudes that I don't like. Oh well, it's Boomer versus Gen Z right now.
They
or
are
something like that.
they are both lazy, but one has actual historical references that you can look at that can inform you about personal or personality traits because that was experienced.
No, not personality traits, just events. You don't know what their personality was before and,
And
after.
how they
and you don't
reacted.
know-
how
It can assume, because if you go by the Zodiac or
You can't assume
Chinese
personality.
Zodiac, it's on a 12-year cycle. Somebody born 12 years before me, who also was a tiger, is nothing like me.
Except for
Because that's a stupid, arbitrary thing to act.
Yeah,
but
except for if
someone
their
born
family-
12 years before me that experienced 9/11, we both experienced 9/11.
Yeah,
Right,
but
but
that's not
We
a
interpreted
personality.
it differently.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how that person as an adult viewed it, how me as a teenager viewed it, is the generational difference. That
No,
can give you a
don't-
baseline of
But it's
assumption.
not personality.
not personality.
And not how you react to the event. You just have a shared event there.
Right.
That's not a shared personality.
It doesn't mean that
But you have a
were-
shared event from a different perspective.
Yeah, fine, but you're not going to see it like, oh, well, my experiences when Princess Diana died made me more resilient. Or my experiences when Princess Diana died made me more fearful. Like, yeah, I don't know. You just know that was an event that had occurred, but you don't know what the value is behind it for that person. And then you roll the dice and you're like, oh, +1 in strength, +1 in wisdom, +1 in magic. You can assume that there may have
event
been some
had
emotional impact,
Yeah.
but you don't know what that emotional impact is. And the same way with like the Zodiac signs, it's like, well,
No,
it
you
doesn't
know
make
that
sense,
with that
but-
event happening, an emotional impact happened.
yeah,
Whether
but
it
you
was a
don't know
lot,
if
whether it
it's-
was a little, you know that something happened there.
Yeah,
Right,
well,
so-
you know a birthday
But
party is a
lumping
fucking
someone in for a
emotional
Zodiac
event.
sign has no point of reference.
But
Except
You're just
for-
saying
but your
a
birthday,
thing
but
and acting
Micah-
as though it's true.
But
As
Micah,
opposed
your
to the
Micah,
event.
Micah, your birthday is an event that has emotional context.
Right. And your family, if they so choose to believe in silly animals that dictate your personality, is also a cultural thing that has some impact to you. I mean, this is just...
It
This
can
is-
be a shared thing too.
We're all in the same death pit trap with bamboo spikes here, right? Like, we cannot get out of this argument because both of us, all of us now, are stuck. And we can't get out.
Guess the commenters will just have to tell us what they think and tell us why they think Micah is wrong in the comments.
God damn it. I honestly think, though, I'm not going to try to get the last word, but I had this topic or something else, and I thought this was going to be more lighthearted. So,
No,
anyway.
it's always-
Dealing with
it
a
always
goddamn
turns-
historian.
Right.
It always turns divisive, so
Mhm.
Wait for doxing episode 2 after this.
Don't
No,
forget my
bad idea.
cliffhanger one that we'll never talk about because I already forgot. Thanks, Mom.
yeah,
Thanks, Mom.
Mom.